in many locations this kind of technology-driven economy has been somehow linked to military. We know it that US biggest Navy base, I think in US, is in San Diego. NASA is located in close to San Francisco, or between San Francisco and Silicon Valley. Now we have this NATO Cybersecurity Center here. Are these links like direct, indirect? Israel, for example, R&D expenditures about 4% of GDP. So, what about these links?
Well, sorry. I'm happy to. I think it's true in some cases. I wouldn't say it's universally true. So certainly Israel, the linkage between the military and the technology sector that I see there is deep and powerful. And so a lot of areas where Israel is really world class at things like optics, things like security, cybersecurity, come directly out of, and artificial intelligence come directly out of military. In other places, I don't think the linkage is as clear. So Silicon Valley, I would argue, I mean, obviously ARPA mattered and the early internet stuff mattered that the military funded, but you really don't see a lot of military crossover into commercialized technology in Silicon Valley. What you do see is academia. And so the important link in Silicon Valley is really Stanford, and to a lesser extent Berkeley, and private industry, you know, starting with Hewlett-Packard, and you had you know, two folks come out of Stanford with engineering degrees and just start building stuff. But Cisco is a great example of, you know, Google is a great example of, you know, we have many examples coming out of academia. So in Estonia, I think the opportunity to invest more in building a few centers of excellence in academia that train the talent to bring the new innovative ideas, I think is a great opportunity. And you do have some fantastic technical expertise here to build from. You know, I think Estonia has a long tradition of world-class technical training, but there is more that can be done to bring some more world-class professors here, so that you're growing the talent base you need.
I would say about the defense industry, which clearly has a strong component in countries that feel highly threatened, as in Israel, is important as funding. I would say the real reason why defense plays an important role, but I don't think in Estonia it has, and it's going to take a change in mindset, is that it provides a degree of sustainability over time that you don't get in any other area. I mean, ARPANET, the idea for the internet, which grew out of ARPANET, grew out of a problem that was realized in the second half of the 1950s, which was that how do you maintain communication networks in the United States should the major centers suffer a nuclear attack? Now, it took almost 30 years to get from, or in fact, it took 30 years to get from realization of the problem in the second half of the 1950s of what do we do if the Soviets bomb us, and how do we talk to each other if New York, Washington, everything is out of business. For the next 25, 30 years, RAND Corporation, the Office of Naval Research, dealt with this problem. The best and the brightest minds of the United States, not only scientists, but also people sort of from the humanities, were all brought in to do this. And what the military security side of this did was it meant that, okay, you're going to be working on this until you solve it, until we have an answer, if there is an answer. But it's sort of in the cyclical process, our cyclical budgetary process, which most of which is year to year, and at best is from March plus 4 years, and that's the maximum. You don't have that. Now maybe if we can get that kind of thinking in security, defense, that we're going to now fund this thing for the next 15 years, and we'll see if something comes out of it. Maybe there's an advantage to it, or could be an advantage. But really the issue, I think, is not defense spending for the sake of defense spending. I think is that in the US and in many countries, defense spending allows you to go far beyond the usual election cycle. That whatever promises whoever someone makes, I mean, in a sense you could say that the internet is the result of an election between Dwight Eisenhower and Adlai Stevenson. In 1956, suddenly, you know, who's going to do more to defend the country? And so, you know, long after, when both men are long dead, no one thinks about the 50s, then you have these people coming up with this network. Well, let's look at the real problem. The real problem is not lack of defense spending. The problem is lack of a long-term planning and commitment to spending, so that, okay, we will, to bring an example closer to home, we will commit for the next 15 years to put this much money into technical education, and no amount of populist electioneering is going to change that, and the next government may be completely different with completely different people, but we will still be committed to this huge commitment to science education, and then the government after that will also be committed, and the government after that, and then you will have 15 years of constant funding and constant thinking about developing a certain area of our educational system, and only then will we begin to see the fruits of that. And this is true I mean, we have empirical evidence. It's what the Irish did. And they remained a poor country, but remained committed to education in the sciences. The Finns did the same thing. They were committed to strong education in the sciences, even when times are very difficult, and the benefits they reap much later. And then those are two examples of non-NATO countries that were not worried about defense spending, but whether we do it because of NATO, because we do it because of worry about nuclear destruction, or we do it because we have a fundamental commitment towards developing a very bright and creative class of Estonians. Well, one way or another, you need a long-term commitment and to go beyond the election cycle.
It's a great point, and as I think about it, having been a venture-funded entrepreneur myself, I'll say venture funding is an incredibly cyclical and trailing indicator industry, right? Now that the economy has crashed, all the VCs are pulling back on funding, where a public sector can really be a great counterbalance to that. And when I think about what are the core strategic sustainable advantages potentially of Estonia, if I were writing the strategic plan for Estonia, two big assets you've got going for you: the NATO Cybersecurity Center, and I think very related, your very successful and early investment in e-government. And so I think Estonia is ahead of much, if not all, of the world in e-government. Being a smaller country too, you can iterate on that. You can learn faster. You can get getting the whole United States bureaucracy onto e-government. Talk about a task, man, that's decades. You were able to do it pretty quickly and can iterate and learn from that. Not surprising then that if you would have a threat, it might try to attack that, which means you get quite good at defending against it. And there's some interesting real capabilities you have here that you could be the best at the world at and learn to develop and export.